Proverbs 16. I want to read one verse tonight, just one, and then see if I can talk about it for half an hour. Proverbs 16, verse 24. Pleasant words are as a honeycomb, sweet to the soul, health to the bones. Can we all say that together? Pleasant words are as a honeycomb, sweet to the soul, and health to the bones. I don't know if you remember the first time you were stung by a bee. I was a little boy and wandering around in the grass beside our house. I was probably 3-4 years old, didn't have any shoes on, stepped on a bee. I remember it was a very sunny day. My foot was in a lot of pain. As far as I know, it's the first time I've ever stung by a little bee. That was nothing in comparison to a few years later when I have a very vivid memory of being put down on the kitchen counter in our house and my parents taking a cloth and trying to wipe away all the places I had been stung by yellow jackets. Apparently in our backyard, there was a yellow jacket nest in some bushes, and I followed a ball that ran into the bushes, and I got the ball, and I got all the yellow jackets too, or I should say they got me. And my parents were trying to soothe all of the little stings of where I had been stung. And it's just ingrained in my mind. I don't really remember following the ball in. I just kind of remember being wiped down on the counter with them telling me I'm not going to die. It just feels like it. And you probably have a similar memory. Every person, regardless of how old, or regardless of how your life has been, has experienced pain. Now, you could probably stand here and give 100 examples of ways you have had pain in your childhood. And being an adult does not ease your pain, let me tell you. Life is filled with pain from the very beginning to the very end. And of course, physical pain is only one aspect of it. There's emotional pain that can come from things like rejection and loss and insults. There's mental pain that can come with things like friendships that fizzle. You teenagers learn about pain when they begin to like a member of the opposite gender, and that member doesn't like them. And then there's anxiety and frustration and fear. Pain attacks on every level, our bodies, our spirits, and our minds. So how do we deal with pain? I mean, what do you do for a husband that loses his job, which forces him to change his career? What do you do for the wife who struggles to make friends in a new town? Or the teen boy being bullied at school? Or the teen girl who's being mocked for her appearance? Or the child who hurts because her parents are divorcing? These are real life examples. And we could come up with hundreds and maybe thousands of ways in which life is filled with pain. So what do we do? I think in terms of what God has given to us, there is one tool that we have that we can use to help people who are in pain, and that is our words. I think, particularly in the Christian home, we need to learn to speak gracious words into hurting hearts. Can I share with you first? Proverbs 16:24 teaches that the wisest of words are always kind. They're always kind. Proverbs connects kindness and wisdom together. You see that? Pleasant words. Solomon doesn't just write this as a means of observation, and God doesn't just canonize it just so that we can say, hey, we should just be all happy all the time. It's there because in the wisdom book, the way of wisdom is to be kind. Wisdom, by the way, you go back to chapter 3 and verse 13, is the very thing we are challenged to pursue. because it is more valuable than gold. Chapter 3 and verse 14, it is rarer than rubies, verse 15, and nothing is more worthy than wisdom. Again, verse 15. Walking in wisdom generally leads to a long life, and it certainly leads to a certain quality of life. And the pathway of wisdom is always kindness and peace, verse 17 of chapter 3. What Solomon wants you to know is that if you want to be wise, you must also focus on being kind. With wisdom comes kindness. And if you don't have kindness, I'll say this kindly, you probably don't have wisdom, because they go together. In fact, Solomon connects kindness with an upright character. The wicked think evil thoughts. That's their natural state. These are thoughts that are detestable to God. But the pure speak kind words, and their purity is described in all sorts of ways. Purity can be like having clean clothes. It can refer to metals that are being purified. When it has all the impurities removed, it can refer to animals that are ceremonially clean in the sacrifices, and it can be in a moral sense, having a pure heart. Those who are pure speak kind words. Those who are wicked think evil thoughts. You think about this for just a moment. The wisest words are kind words, because the way of wisdom is to be kind, and because wisdom leads to an upright character, which always involves kindness. So I would say this: if you're wise, you default to kind words. He says, the pleasant words are as a honeycomb. They are inherently, naturally, normally pleasant. That is, they're agreeable. Do you know the kind of words that are pleasant are the words that bring peace to life's situations? Let me give you just a right up to the minute example. Last night, I was standing in the airport in Orlando after having a long flight delay. Some of you have experienced that. I'm standing there, a long flight delay, wondering if my plane is going to take off, wondering if I need to rent a car and start driving to carry, what do I need to do? And thinking, I really don't want to drive and get home at 4 a.m. and then have church. I really would not like to do that. But if I have to, I will. So we're trying to decide what to do. Becky and I are praying for wisdom. And I'm talking to a lady at one of the counters who works for the airline, and she is giving me almost no help. In fact, I'm almost getting the impression from her that she's enjoying the fact that I don't know what to do. Have you ever had a run into a person like that? I'm frustrated, and I'm not being angry with her. That doesn't ever help. I'm just trying to get information out of her, and she's saying, "Oh, I can't help you. I don't have any information to give," and she is clearly enjoying the fact that I'm in trouble. So I walk 2 counters over to the plane flight going to Charlotte. There was one going to Charlotte almost the exact same time as the delayed plane that was leaving going to Raleigh. And Charlotte's not far, a couple hour drive. I'm sorry, 2.5 hours. I kept saying couple hours, and Becky kept saying 2.5 hours. So 2.5 hours. It's a 2.5 hour drive. And I'm thinking, that's not bad. We can do that, if we get in reasonable time. We can still get home, reasonably early and not before midnight, before midnight, so not too late. And I go over to that counter, and the lady there is the exact opposite of her colleague. Helpful, gracious. What can I do to help you figure this out? And she gives me a solution that the other lady was saying, you have to make this decision, you have to make it now, and if you make it wrong, you're in trouble. And I'm really not going to help you. And the other lady said, let's figure this out together. Now, I'm going to tell you, I walked away from both those encounters saying, not pleasant woman, really pleasant woman, right? She's honeycomb. That's what she is. Her words were agreeable. They were suitable. Pleasant words are suitable. They fit the situation. It's not obnoxious words in a time that demands solemnity. It's not joking around at a time where there needs to be a seriousness. At the same time, it's not a dullness and a seriousness at a time when there's joking around and where things are light. And it's suitable. They are graceful words. Instead of producing anger, they produce grace. They provide grace. They encourage grace. When you have pleasant words, they just naturally are agreeable. They're graceful and they're beautiful. They're becoming. They don't lead to sinful things. They don't lead to sinful thoughts. These are words that are naturally, inherently pleasant. And Solomon says these are the words that are valuable. The wise use kind words. They default to kindness. And Solomon states that these are valuable words. In fact, the proverb here ties the pleasing words, the wise words themselves, with refreshment. It's the reference of the honey dripping from the comb, the natural sweetener. Have you ever had something that was supposed to be sweet, but whoever baked the cake or the cookies forgot to put in the sugar? That's a disaster. That's not good. I love sweet things. I have a sweet tooth, which is really bad for being diabetic, but I just really like things that are sweet. Did you know, as bad as we are today with sugar, I read this week that in the 1100s, Europeans ate 4.5 pounds of honey every year. 4.5 pounds? Doesn't that seem high to you? Especially with all the poverty that was common of that day. How much it cost to have food. And by the way, honey eventually lost out to sugar. Honey was used in Egypt as a currency. It was included in marriage vows. They would say, I will give you, my wife, honey. In fact, I think this is probably why eventually the wife was often called honey. This is kind of where it came from. And by the way, it's interesting that this is the kind of reference connected to the Word of God. In Psalm 19, verse 11, it's sweeter than the honeycomb. Think about it. How sweet is honey? I mean, who doesn't like sweet things? Oh, I know some of you would rather have the savory and all that, but at the end of the day, we all like things that are sweet, some more than others, but we all like sweet things. And our words should be sweet. Now, what that doesn't mean is that our words should be sweet so as to excuse sin, so as to overlook failings, so as to wink at sin. I'm just going to let it go. Boys will be boys. That's not wisdom at all. That's folly. But they should still be kind. I don't know if you've ever been disciplined by an authority figure where they weren't kind. Kind of reminds me of my time in the military. Drill instructors are not inherently kind people. They just don't have that loving, squishy teddy bear kind of persona about them. They're not kind. But I've had authority figures where I was in trouble, discipline me, and they were very kind. And I'm going to tell you, I was very thankful for their kindness. Even though there was still discipline being met out, there was a kindness to it. And I would say to you that when you have an authority figure who is not kind, woe be to you. Because even when there needs to be discipline meted out, even when punishment must be dealt out, it can still be done with kindness. There can still be a sweetness to the spirit. The wisest words are always kind, even when dealing with sin, even when discussing judgment. And they provide value because, here's our second idea, kind words breathe life into those that hear them. First, they encourage the discouraged. Look again at verse 24. Pleasant words are as honeycomb, sweet to the soul. They breathe life into the soul. The soul is a reference to man's internal being. It's your innermost self. This is who you really are. This is your life. It refers to also your mind, but it's the idea of your inner self. And the idea here is that it provides sweetness to the soul. It's inflating something that's been deflated. Somebody who's discouraged, somebody who's down, somebody who's depressed, somebody who's struggling. This is what pleasant words does. It buoys them. It brings them back up again. It provides joy in their heart. You have a child come home from school. We had days like this, and it just seems like the worst of all things. I remember, I say this, he probably would be embarrassed, so I'm gonna say it, but I want you to understand. He might be embarrassed a little bit about this, but when Aaron was in 6th grade, he came to the car very upset because some of his friends had called him a name. I mean, he was crying, he was angry crying. It was the angry crying, and he got in the car and he was, I'm never going to be friends with any of them again. He's very good friends with all of them. Okay, all these years later, but I'm never being friends with any of them again. And I thought, this is a disaster. What have they called you? And apparently in class they have been talking about the Freemasons as a group. You're familiar with Masonry, and some of the founders of the country were Masons, and this kind of almost a quasi cult that's still around. And apparently some of his friends called him a Freemason, and that really bothered him. He was really upset. Now I'm exactly like you. I'm trying not to laugh. Okay, I'm in the car, trying not to laugh. I thought they called him a really bad name, maybe used some swear word. Okay, but he's a 6th grader. You have to stop for a second and put yourself in the 6th grade mind. This was meant a lot to him. This is really, really, really important to him. And so instead of laughing at him, making fun of him, I said, okay, they called you a name, hurt your feelings. Let's talk that through. So I'm trying to respond in kindness to his pain. He was experiencing pain. What I'm really trying to do is encourage him. You know what? Your friends, they were joking around. The best way to handle that is laugh with them. Say, yeah, I'm George Washington or something like that, and just kind of let it go by. Say, I'm going to go chop down your cherry tree. I don't know. Just I'm going to wear a wig and buffalo teeth. Something. Just let it go. It's not a big deal. This kind of thing. Trying to encourage him. Now, as he got older, the problems got bigger. And they got bigger. He had a teacher his freshman year of college who mocked him in front of the class while he was out of the class. And I was going to call the school, have a chat with some people in the administration. That's wrong, rude. I was the angry one. He's begging me, please, Dad, don't do that. Please don't do that. But what he wanted was just say, hey, Dad, this is what happened to me today. Can you encourage me? You see, here's what pleasant words do. They encourage you. And I want you to think about in your family. Husbands, are you breathing life into your discouraged wife's heart? Are you? Are your words encouraging her? Are they lifting her up when she's had a bad day? When she's gone through difficulty? When she's struggling at work or in the home or in whatever capacity she's managing her way through life? Are your words encouraging her? Or are they trying to fix everything? We're fix-it men, right? And what she really wants is someone just to speak pleasant words to her. My wife and I had lengthy discussions in the early part of our marriage to figure out what I was trying to figure out what in the world she was thinking, and she was trying to figure out what in the world I was thinking. And we had this conflict sometimes because we didn't think the same way about things. And often she would just share an idea with me, not so that I would critique it and try to give her some better solutions, but just so I would go, oh, that's great. That's wonderful. It's the old, does this dress make me look fat question, It's just, can you provide pleasing words to me? Which is really what she was asking for. And it took me a while to figure that out. So, husbands, are you breathing life into your wife's heart? Are you encouraging her, discouraged heart? Wives, are you encouraging your husbands? Do you know men have a male ego? Do any of you women know that? Are you aware of that? I've been in counseling situations with wives who had no idea when I would say, are you aware of the male ego? And they're just looking at me like I am crazy. It's real. It really exists. Men, as strong as they look on the outside, can be as fragile as little boys, especially from their wives, because of this ego. It's so easily temperamental. And what you say can just reduce them down to a little pile of dirt. I'm serious. You probably know just the words you can say to bring your husband to a complete stop. Use pleasant words. I'm not saying you have to give him a big head, make him think he's the greatest thing in the world. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying lie to him, but I do think you can speak kind words to him. What about it, mom and dad? Do you speak kind words to your children? Are you breathing life into their discouraged hearts when they bring their little problems to you, when they bring their little difficulties to you? Are you giving them encouragement? Do you know that if you don't encourage them when they're little, guess what they're not going to do when they're older? They're not going to come to you for encouragement. I just had this week one of the saddest situations come across in a conversation with another pastor of a man that I know who's older, who got into a situation where his wife passed away. She was sick, she passed away, and he remarried. And that's fine, whatever. But apparently his children are unhappy with the remarriage, the new marriage, the new wife. And I thought, initially hearing this story, and I knew that he had been married just recently, so why are they so upset? And then the backstory came out. All these years, he's had no real relationship with his children. Mom was the one who glued the family together. And now that mom died, here he was all these years, not really interested in them as adults, not really interested in the grandchildren. Always they're kind of underfoot. They're always kind of bothersome and troublesome and always kind of pushing them away. And now he's newly married again and wants to have a new wife accepted by the family. And hey, everybody, let's have these big family functions. And they're all kind of standoffish. And he can't figure out why. And I can tell you why. Because for years, he didn't speak encouraging words to their hurting hearts. He just backed away and had no relationship with them. And it's sad because I know who these people are. I know them very well. And I just would never have suspected that. Never would have dreamed that was true. And then it makes me even more sad because the man is in a pastoral position. And I just hear that and I think, here's a person who's not speaking gracious words into his children's lives. Parents, are you doing that? Are you speaking encouraging, gracious words into their hurting hearts? These words sweeten this internal self. Sweetness is a reference to what is good. This word pleasant has the root form is to eat with pleasure. It's often used as a metaphor for something that pleases. That which is sweet is something that brings pleasure. It pleases me. The internal self is sweetened by these words. So it breathes life. It encourages the discouraged. It's sweet to the soul, but it's also health to the bones. Look at this. They cure the sick. Now, the word health here is a reference to ancient medicine. It means to bring back soundness of body, a word that we might use, the word healing. It has value to the body. Our physical is tied to our emotional and mind together. It's kind of hard to think about this, but we are beings that have multiple aspects to us. Some theologians say we are bipartite. Bipartite means body, soul, spirit. And they make soul, spirit one. So I have a body and I have a soul, spirit. I have the material side of me and I have the immaterial side of me. Other theologians say no, we are body, we are soul, and spirit. They divide soul and spirit into two parts. It really doesn't matter which side you believe, in my view. I'm tripartite. I believe in body, soul, and spirit. But there are really good people who believe in body, soul, spirit. Fine. The point is this. Life isn't just about the body. And when you are deflated, actually what happens in your soul and spirit can influence your body. That, I think, is exactly what's happening in James chapter 5, where you have a man who's in sin, and because of his sin, he's physically sick. We call that a psychosomatic disorder. Um, Guilt can wreak havoc on the human body. It can absolutely just wreak havoc on your body. When you're living in a sinful situation and nobody knows about it, and you're keeping it a secret and you're hiding it, but you're inside, you're just guilty and you're racked with the guilt pangs because of that sin, it will actually have an influence on your body. David refers to this in the Psalms on more than one occasion of how his body was suffering because of the sin in his life. This kind of relationship between your soul and spirit and your body is because you are all of them together. All of you. You are your body and you are your soul and you are your spirit, or soul spirit, depending on which way you take that. You are both of that. You're all of that together. And when you speak healing words, when you speak sweet words to the soul, it has an effect on your body. It lifts you up physically. It adds value to your body. Kind words can restore the body to health by lifting up those who are depressed. Kind words refresh people. They deliver people. They provide remedy for people. They relax the mind. They give gentleness. You ever had a situation where you offended somebody and then you just feel bad about it? The Holy Spirit convicts you and you feel bad about it. And so you contact that person, you say, I am so sorry for what I did. And then it's just silence. No response. How do you feel? How do you feel? Terrible. And it's not just my insides that feel terrible. I feel terrible all over. I'm waiting to hear the magic words. I forgive you. I need to hear, I forgive you. I need that person to forgive me because I wronged that person. I need to have that response. Now, I'm going to tell you, the people I love the most, it means the most to me. When I've wronged them, I need them to forgive me. I need to hear that as soon. Those are kind words that breathe life. It's refreshing. It breathes life into my soul. It's sweet to my soul. It's health to my bones. I need that kind of response. So can I give you 6 ideas for how your words can be helpful? Number 1, be encouraging. Be encouraging. Just be an encourager. My daughter is so tired of hearing the word encouragement. For about the last 3 years, I've been saying to her, sweetheart, let me encourage you to do X, Y, and Z. And by her freshman year of college, she said, Dad, I hate the word encouragement. I just hate that word, because she knows it's encouraging her to do something she doesn't want to do. Now, then she called me one day and she said, Dad, the worst thing has happened to me. I said, what's that? Well, they've stopped at college here. They've stopped talking about demerits and discipline. They're calling it encouragement. It's the worst. I hate encouragement. You can be encouraging. And encouragement means to do right. Do the right thing. Let me encourage you. You can be righteous with your words. Always lifting up God. Always showing Christ to the person you're speaking to. Never running down the Christian attitude, the Christian response, but be righteous with your words. You can be positive, number 3. Be positive. Be on the good side of things. Even when you're delivering bad news, you can be on the positive side of things. You don't have to just run into the negative side all the time. You don't have to be living on the negative side of life. Be on the positive side. I just scratch my head at people who like negative things. I know people like that. And I scratch my head. Why do you get enjoyment when things are negative? Why does that make you happy? Why are you encouraged when things are discouraging? And why not be encouraged when things are good? Be positive. Number 4, be thoughtful. Actually think, how will what I say influence somebody else? I'm going to tell you, it doesn't happen very often anymore. But about the first 5 years of this church, my wife and I would leave church, and on our way home, the entire way home, we would recount everything we said to everybody, ask ourselves, did we say something wrong? We were so worried about saying something wrong, and we would just really try to go over every conversation. Now, I don't do that anymore, and here's a couple reasons why. Because I'm going to say things that are wrong. I absolutely will. And I have no problem saying I'm sorry when I do say things that are wrong. When I say wrong, I'm going to say I'm sorry. But also because I have learned to try to be more thoughtful. Over the years of dealing with people, God has used that in my life to help me try to think of, is this going to hurt that person's feelings? Is this going to cause that person to think the wrong kind of thoughts? I'm trying to be thoughtful. I want to speak pleasant words. Number 5, be tactful. It's kind of like being thoughtful, but with an extra little dose of medicine here, an extra boost. Be tactful. You don't have to give all the gory details when you're telling a story or when you're dealing with another person. You don't have to get into the weeds. You don't have to deal with all the nitty-gritty all the time. Now, in private, it's a confrontation situation. You may have to, but most of the time you don't. You can be tactful. I'm going to tell you this. Never, men, embarrass your wives in front of other people. And ladies, never embarrass your husbands. Never say anything that's going to embarrass them. Try your best not to embarrass your children. That's one I've had to learn because I can sometimes embarrass my children with what I say. I want to be careful not to do that. Be tactful. And then finally, be proactive with your words. Don't hold back. Don't be silent. It doesn't say pleasant words are words that aren't spoken. They have to be spoken. You have to say them. You have to say, let me tell you how great things were today with the way you handled that situation. Honey, I really appreciate the way you dealt with the kids here. It was great because I saw the way they responded to you, and that was really good. Be proactive. Actually speak them. I'm going to tell you, I've never met a wife yet who's tired of their husbands complimenting them. I've never had someone come into my office and say, Pastor, we've got to talk. My husband, he's got a problem. He's always telling me how great I am and how good things are going. You know, that would be something. But I have had people call and say, can we talk? My husband screams at me. Over the years, in my ministry life, not just in this church, other churches, I've had people say, hey, I need to talk. My wife, you'd never know it. She's got a temper. She just screams at the kids. She just loses it. Her eyes bug out of her head. It's like she's a monster. Kind words are the wisest words. You know what they are? They're Terry Koval cakes, right? That's what they are. I've never had a cake she made that I disliked. Now I just have to enjoy them through you vicariously. I didn't even get a piece of my birthday cake, right? I'd have to pump myself with so much insulin. I'd be in danger of going into a coma of some sort. She makes awfully good cakes, doesn't she? That's how your words ought to be. Pleasant and sweet. Let's pray. Lord,